Hello and welcome back to Bigfoot Lake. I appreciate you all stopping by Bigfoot Lake tonight to hear two stories of Bigfoot encounters. One comes all the way from the land down under in Australia, and the second comes from British Columbia. So with that being said, pull up a stump, sit back and relax and hear the tale of two Bigfoot encounters. The first one took place in the mountains around Brook National Park in southeastern Queensland, Australia, to the east of Woonbarra Lookout, near the Little Nerang Dam. The area is mountainous and the bush is thick, although not too far from towns and houses, farms, etc. In 1984, I was living on the Queensland Gold Coast. My best friend Wayne lived in Springbrook with his parents. In September, a friend of mine, Anna, came to visit from Melbourne. Wayne and I had often used the walking trails in the national park that stem from the Guangarella picnic area in the Purling Brook Falls. We had never seen anything unusual. Anna wanted to hike in some rougher country, so we parked at the Woonbarra Lookout and walked southeast for quite a distance, crossing the Little Nerang Creek and continuing into the national park area. We stopped on the hillside overlooking the dam and stayed there for a few hours. We commented to each other that we felt like we were being watched and concluded that there must be someone else sharing our bush paradise. As it was late in the afternoon, we set to walking back along a very vague animal trail that we had followed into the area. At one point, we were walking across the slope of a heavily wooded hill. Now, we weren't going up or down. We were walking slowly, picking our way along about 4 meters apart. We crossed a rocky, dry creek bed running down the slope in amongst the trees. Wayne crossed it first, Anna crossed second, and as she crossed, she looked to her right up the creek bed. She froze on the spot. Wayne turned around and came back, and I caught up to Anna. Looking up the creek bed, we all saw a human-sized, black, sleek-furred creature. It was squatting on a rock at the edge of the creek bed about 6 to 7 meters away, about 23 feet. It seemed to be playing with a twig or something. It noticed us, and I remember seeing a human/ape face with glistening eyes. The facial area was black but free of fur, as were the hands and feet also. Had it not been moving, it would have been totally camouflaged by the black shadows of the bush around it. This took place in only about 30 seconds. The creature didn't seem to be disturbed by our presence at all. Then we heard a strange gurgled sound, and something came crashing through the bush towards the creature. There was a brief pause and silence while the smaller creature looked behind it. Then a huge, long arm with a hand and 5 fingers covered in the same black fur reached out for that smaller creature. The smaller creature took the hand, and the arm drew the smaller creature away. We could hear them moving through the leaves for a few seconds, but as soon as the spell was broken, we bolted out of there at world record speed. Between us, we later confirmed that there was a strange kind of wet dog smell about these creatures, and that the smaller creature was almost definitely a quote-unquote child. The smaller creature was about 170 centimeters tall, which is about 5 foot 6 inches, maybe a little taller. It was wiry and gangly, kind of like a chimpanzee. When it stood up, it was surprisingly very upright and erect, nothing like an ape's posture. everything like a human posture. Its arms and legs were long. There was no flesh coloring anywhere to be seen. It was all black. The bigger creature was the same, but the arm we saw reach out was very muscular. We agreed that we did see a suggestion of a breast as the bigger creature bent down. It was possibly a female. We've never seen more than odd black wallaby in this area. However, black animals are common in this thick bush, as they only have to stand stock still and they vanish into the hard shadows. We thought that these creatures might have been following us, or at least observing us as we picnicked at the dam. Anna returned to Melbourne and did some research at the state library. There was no internet in those days. She found a report in a Brisbane newspaper from about 30 years previous, where a couple of hikers were fishing in Little Nerang River. They had put the caught fish behind them on the bank. They heard a noise, and when they turned around, they saw a huge black-furred humanoid creature making off with their catch into the surrounding bush. Apparently they took photos of the large footprints left in the creek bank mud, but God only knows what happened to them. When they were hiking back to Purling Brook Falls, they reported that something kept throwing small rocks at them, but they couldn't see who or what it was. So that's a fascinating encounter from Australia. And do you think this could possibly be the smaller one, the one that was 5'6"? Do you think that was likely to be a child Bigfoot, a juvenile? And that this was probably the mother trying to protect it, because that child, they said it didn't even flinch when it saw them. It just kept going about its business. But when the larger one, the possible female one, showed up, it knew to take the child away. So yeah, let me know what you think about that encounter with potentially a mother and a juvenile Bigfoot from Australia. I thought that was a fascinating encounter. And then they also had the evidence of 30 years prior, when another black-furred creature was witnessed taking this couple's fish and going up into the bush. So kind of adds credence to the encounter. So let me know what you think of that one. Okay, with that being said, let's dive into our second encounter of the night. And like I said, this one is from British Columbia. On August 23rd of 1960, I had been out on my own for 6 months, living by competing at rodeos. I was just 16. I had just finished a rodeo in Washington and had a couple hundred in my pocket. 3 fellow hands asked me to go with them on a canoe trip in British Columbia to get their winter meat. They were all BC natives. They were Jim, Kid, and Earl. Jim and Kid were sons of French trappers, and they had native mothers. Earl was a full-blood native. They had lots of equipment and knew the area to the north and east of Risk Creek. We would launch the freighter canoes, 20 feet long, with 7.5 Evinrude kickers at a place near Horsley, east of Williams Lake, and go north and east from there up a string of lakes and rivers. We took 2 canoes with 35 gallons of spare gas, a spare prop, and 100 shear pens. We had a tent in each canoe, a rifle, and a shotgun, 2 fishing rods, 1 tackle box, bedrolls, and a grub box. We traveled light because we knew there would be portages, and since they were all natives, we could shoot anything as we went. We had 20 pounds of flour, salt, pepper, tea tea, lard, and pemmican, and tobacco to give to natives that we encountered on our way. My friends were from 20 to 23 years old, and I was the youngest. The first 2 days were fairly uneventful. We made good time and moved steadily up a series of lakes and creeks. The first night we camped at an abandoned mine of some sort and dined on fresh fish and rice and beans. Day 2, the streams got narrower and swifter, and we had 2 portages. Still, we made nearly 50 miles. In our canoe, Jim and I, we had Winchester Model 110 30-06 and my 12-gauge Model 12 pump. Ducks and geese were everywhere, and we had those for dinner the second night, fixed with some French name I can't recall. You pick them, rub them with lard, and season them. A green branch is bent in a U and inserted in the cavity, and they are suspended over the coals. So it was the best duck I ever ate. On day 3, Kid and Earl in the lead canoe rounded a bend and shot a young moose of about 600 pounds. We spent 4 hours dressing and caching the meat on an elevated platform. It was cold and it froze every night. We were at the base of a small lake, and as we were working, 3 canoes with natives came down the lake at full speed. Kid waved them in. There were 4 adult males and 2 maybe teenagers, and 3 adult women and 1 girl of about 10. I assumed they were an extended family. We gave them about 100 pounds of meat and some flour and tea and tobacco. They spoke no English, at least not in front of me, and I understood not one word except twice, when one of the women said Sasquatch and laughed twice. At the time, I assumed she was making a joke for me. They left after smoking with us and giving us 3 big whitefish and some pemmican. We took maybe 20 pounds of prime meat, caching the rest under a tarp and some bark. The platform was standard cache for that area, about 12 feet off the ground. We went on, still heading north and east. We left the small lake and went through a chute into another lake, and then east into a smaller river. This stream was maybe 40 to 60 feet wide and medium swift. About 7, we started looking for a campsite and found one on the north bank and a bend of the river. The right bank was covered with boulders, rounded by glaciation and current, but the left bank was clear with a flat area under some trees. We were all tired, and we hit the sack before full dark. It doesn't get dark there until tomorrow. Sometime, maybe 2 or 3 in the morning, Jim and I were awakened by a loud crash in the campsite. Thinking bear, we grabbed our guns and kicked back at the tent flap. Nothing. Jim had a flashlight and he turned it on. Earl and Kid were now out of their tent and armed. A boulder about the size and shape of a bowling ball had destroyed our Dutch oven and part of the cookbook box. We stood around trying to sort things out when a second boulder hit Kid and Earl's tent dead center. It came straight down through the trees. I was standing there, open mouthed, when both Kid and Jim grabbed me and Earl and drug us deeper into the trees. Naturally, there was a lot of discussion, but I won't relate the tenor of that. We spent the rest of the short night in a circle, back to back, safeties off. From time to time, we would hear more rocks hitting that area and some sort of strange hooting from the other side of the river. After a good sunup, we slowly crept back to camp. One tent was toast, as were the cook box and most of the cooking equipment. I counted 9 rocks, ranging in size from a bowling ball to beach ball size. The largest weighted maybe 150 to 200 pounds. Fortunately, the canoes were undamaged and we quickly pulled up camp and started out. We got to the meat cache that morning and it was gone. Not destroyed, gone. Totally. 100% gone. No logs, no rope, no meat, no carcass. I have no opinion on that. We ran wide open going out and camped that night in the canoes in the middle of the lake. Jim and Kid are now dead, killed in a float plane crash some years ago. Earl, I don't know about. I am certain of only 5 things regarding that trip. Those rocks were not on the bank where we pitched camp when we pitched camp. They were not carried into our camp. They were thrown. No human being did it. I have no desire to ever again go into that country. Last, I am not a believer or a skeptic, but I don't exactly discount much of what I don't understand. As to the lack of scientific evidence, try and throw a 150-pound boulder across a 50-foot stream. I saw it done, and I don't know what did it. So that is the conclusion of the second story. I found that with the interactions with the Native Americans and almost like a warning from the native lady when she said that word Sasquatch. Maybe she was trying to tell them something. But they possibly learned the hard way. What do you guys think about that story? Sound like a Bigfoot to you? Does that sound like Sasquatch? A 150-pound boulder. I mean, that's hard enough for someone to pick up, let alone launch from the trees across a 50-foot stream. And there were 9 boulders in total that landed in their camp and basically destroyed their camp. A lot of detail in this one, and I also found it fascinating that not only was their meat cache gone, the whole entire cache was gone. The ropes, the logs, everything. It was all missing. So yeah, let me know what you think of the second story. I thought it was quite fascinating. So we had a first encounter with a potential mother and child, Bigfoot, and this second encounter with some massive boulders thrown at these explorers going up into the mountains and streams and lakes of British Columbia. So yeah, let me know what you think. I appreciate you guys' comments. I want to wish each and everybody a Happy New Year, as this video will be dropping on New Year's Eve. I want to thank all of you for your support so far. It really means a lot. The channel is nothing without people listening, commenting. It's great to hear back from you guys. I read each and every comment, and I try to comment back on all of them. So all of that feedback is greatly appreciated. So hope you enjoyed the 2 Bigfoot encounters for tonight, and hope you have a great New Year's Eve and have a great New Year's. That's from me and my wife, Miss Lake Fairy. With that being said, we'll see you on the next.